The grand chamber of the Galactic Concordat was the largest room ever built by any species in the known universe. Its walls were made of living crystal that grew on the planet Valurus Prime. The crystal pulsed with soft blue light as thousands of alien representatives took their seats. They had come from 47 different species, spread across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Today, they would make history. High Chancellor Zirith stood at the center of the chamber. He was a Villani, tall and thin, with skin like polished black stone. His eyes were silver, and they reflected the light of the crystal walls. He had led the Concordat for 60 years. In all that time, he had never called a full assembly like this one. "My fellow beings," Zirith said. His voice carried through the chamber without any need for technology. The acoustics were perfect. "We face a threat unlike any we have encountered before. Not from disease. Not from cosmic disaster. Not from war as we have known it. The threat comes from a single species, on a small planet, in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Everyone knew which species he meant. Human Zirith continued. "They call themselves humans. They come from a world they call Earth. A death world. A planet of extreme temperatures, violent weather, dangerous predators, and toxic plants. By all logic, they should never have survived. But they did more than survive. They thrived. And now they threaten everything we have built." A representative from the Kreth Dominion raised one of his 4 arms. "High Chancellor, the humans have shown no aggression toward Concordat space. Their fleet is small compared to ours. What threat do they pose?" Zirith smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "That is exactly what they want us to think. Let me show you the real danger." The crystal walls flickered and images appeared all around the chamber. They showed planets across the galaxy. On each one, something strange was happening. The Meraki Zirith said, "A primitive species we have used for mining operations for 300 years. Last month they began demanding payment for their work. Payment. They learned this concept from human traders who visited their world." The image changed. The Veth. Simple farmers who have served the Concordat faithfully for generations. Human scientists taught them advanced agricultural techniques. Now, they produce twice as much food as before. They have begun selling the surplus instead of giving it to us. Another image. The Krellian exiles. "We declared them extinct centuries ago after they refused to join the Concordat. We were wrong. The humans found them. The humans hid them. The humans helped them rebuild." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The Krellians had been a powerful species once. The war to destroy them had cost millions of lives. "This is what humans do," Zirith said, raising his voice above the noise. "They do not conquer with weapons. They conquer with ideas. With kindness. With hope. They make other species believe they deserve more than what we give them. They teach the weak to stand against the strong. They upset the natural order of the galaxy." The Villani High Chancellor let his words sink in before continuing. "In the past 50 years, human influence has spread to over 200 worlds. Productivity is down across Concordat space because workers now expect fair treatment. Client species are demanding independence. Trade routes are disrupted because former servants now want to negotiate as equals." He paused. "If we do not act now, the Concordat will collapse within a generation. Not from war, but from the slow poison of human philosophy spreading through our systems." The chamber was silent now. Every representative understood the implications. "I call for a vote," Zirith announced. "Total war against humanity. We will take their colonies. We will occupy their homeworld. We will show the galaxy that the old order still stands. Those who spread chaos must face consequences." The vote took only minutes. It was unanimous, 12,000 light-years away. President Alina Vasquez was eating lunch in her office when the transmission arrived. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had been president for 6 years and had hoped to spend her final term focused on domestic issues. The galaxy had other plans. She watched the declaration 3 times before calling her joint chiefs. They gathered in the war room beneath the White House. Admirals, generals, and intelligence directors filled the seats around the long table. They've given us 30 days to surrender all colonies, dismantle our fleet, and submit to corrective guidance, Vasquez said. Their fleet outnumbers ours approximately 50-1. Admiral Chen, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet, leaned forward. We cannot win a conventional war against the Concordat. Our ships are better designed, and our crews are more creative. But those advantages mean nothing against those numbers. Then we do not fight a conventional war, Vasquez replied. She turned to her communications director. Send the signal. Everyone who has ever helped us. Everyone we have ever helped. Send the SOS. The director hesitated. Madam President, if the Concordat intercepts that signal, they will know we are calling for aid. They will accelerate their timeline, let them, Vasquez said. And then she did something that confused every alien intelligence officer monitoring Earth. She smiled. We have been preparing for this day for a very long time. We just hoped it would never come. The signal went out across every frequency, in every language, to every corner of the galaxy. It was not a cry for help. It was an invitation. It said simply, the time has come. If you stand with us, come home. On a mining world called Kreth 7, an old Meraki named Torgan received the signal on a hidden communicator he had kept for 20 years. A human engineer had given it to him and said one day it would light up. When that day came, Torgan should be ready. He gathered his people and told them the waiting was over. On the agricultural moon of Salaith, a Veth scientist named Prilla read the signal and immediately began activating protocols she had prepared years ago. The crops the Concordat depended on would soon become worthless to them. But her people would have plenty to eat. On a hidden station in the darkness between stars, the last survivors of the Krellian species powered up ships that had waited in silence for 200 years. They had sworn an oath to humanity. Today that oath would be honored. Across 1,000 worlds, hidden places and forgotten corners, beings of every shape and size received the same message. They were the lost and the forgotten, the oppressed and the abandoned, the weak and the powerless, and every single one of them had a story about a human who had helped them when no one else would. High Chancellor Zereth had declared war on Earth. He thought he was fighting one small species on one small planet. He had no idea that humanity had spent the last century not building weapons, but building something far more powerful. They had built friendships. They had built trust. They had built a network of allies that stretched across the entire galaxy. The Concordat wanted war. They were about to discover what happened when you declared war on the one species that never abandoned its friends, and across the stars. Those friends were coming home. The galaxy declared war. The Deathworlders smiled and sent an SOS that shook every alien empire. Part 2. Weeks had passed since the Concordat declared war on humanity. High Chancellor Zereth sat in his private chambers reviewing reports from across the Alliance. Each report was worse than the last. Something was happening throughout Concordat space. Something he could not explain. The first problem appeared on Kreth 7, the largest mining operation in the Eastern Spiral Arm. The Meraki workers had stopped working. All of them, at the same moment. Across every mine on the planet, the Overseer's report was confused and frightened. They simply put down their tools and sat down. When I demanded they return to work, their leader, an old male named Torgan, said one word: strike. I do not know what this word means, but they refused to explain. Zereth knew the word. He had studied human history. A strike was when workers refused to work until their demands were met. It was a concept that had never existed in the Concordat. Workers worked because they were told to work. There was no negotiation. The second problem came from the agricultural moon of Salaith. The grain harvest had been completed on schedule, but something was wrong with the crops. Every grain tested perfectly safe for the Veth who grew it. But for every other Concordat species, it was completely indigestible. Not poisonous. Just useless. The Veth farmers claimed innocence. They said the crops must have mutated naturally. But the Concordat scientists found evidence of careful genetic modification. Someone had taught the Veth how to alter their crops at the molecular level. This was technology they should not have had for another 1,000 years. Xerath knew who had taught them. The humans had sent a scientist named Dr. Maria Santos to Salaith 8 years ago for what they called a cultural exchange. Everyone thought she was just studying local farming methods. She had actually been teaching the Veth how to fight back without ever raising a weapon. The third problem was the worst. Communications across 3 sectors had become unreliable. Messages were delayed or scrambled. Military frequencies were filled with strange interference. The Concordat technicians traced the problem to thousands of tiny devices hidden throughout their relay network. Someone had been planting them for years, but it was the 4th report that made Xerath truly afraid. Ships were gathering at the edge of Concordat space. Not human ships. The humans only had a few hundred vessels. These were thousands of ships from dozens of different species. Some were designs the Concordat had never seen before. Others were ancient vessels that should have been destroyed centuries ago. The Krellian warships were real. The species the Concordat had tried to exterminate had been hiding in deep space for 200 years. And now they had returned, on the planet Valuris Prime. A young intelligence officer named Vesic was trying to make sense of the chaos. She was Villani like the High Chancellor, but she had none of his certainty. She had spent her career studying other species, trying to understand them. What she was seeing now was unlike anything in her training. "It is coordinated," she told her supervisor. "Everything happening across Concordat space is connected. The strikes, the crop failures, the communication disruptions, they all started within hours of the human signal." Her supervisor dismissed her concerns. "The humans do not have the resources for such an operation. You are seeing patterns where none exist." But Thesic knew she was right. She began digging deeper into Concordat records, looking for any connection between humanity and the chaos spreading through the Alliance. What she found changed everything she believed about the galaxy. 50 years ago, a human medical ship had visited a Concordat world during a plague outbreak. The Concordat had refused to help because the affected species was considered unimportant. The humans had stayed for 6 months. They saved 2 million lives. The survivors called themselves the Healed Ones. They had been waiting for a chance to repay the debt 40 years ago. Human traders had discovered that a Concordat transport company was secretly dumping toxic waste on inhabited worlds. The humans had exposed the company and helped the affected species file complaints with the Galactic Court. The case was dismissed, but the species remembered who had stood with them. 30 years ago, a human exploration vessel had found the lost colony of Praxis 4. The colonists had been abandoned by the Concordat 3 centuries earlier when their world became unprofitable. The humans had brought them food, medicine, and technology. They had asked for nothing in return except friendship. The list went on and on. Hundreds of incidents across 50 years. Thousands of species touched by human kindness. None of it had seemed important at the time. A medical mission here. A trade agreement there. Cultural exchanges and scientific cooperation. Small gestures that the Concordat had ignored or dismissed. But those small gestures had added up to something enormous. The SSIK finally understood what was happening. The humans had not been expanding recklessly. They had been building a network. Every species they helped became a friend. Every friend became a potential ally. Every ally was now answering humanity's call. She ran to the High Chancellor's chambers with her findings. Xerath listened in silence as she explained what she had discovered. "The humans did not build a fleet to fight us," Desic said. "They built something more powerful. They built relationships. Every world they visited, every species they helped, they were planting seeds. Now those seeds are growing." Xerath stared at the data on the Essex tablet. "How many?" he asked quietly. "How many species did they touch?" Thesic hesitated. "Based on my research, at least 300 that we know of. Probably many more that we have no records of." The High Chancellor was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Smaller somehow. "We declared war on a single planet," he said. "We may have actually declared war on half the galaxy." On Earth, President Vasquez was receiving similar reports, but her reaction was very different. Ships were arriving at the Sol system every hour. Former enemies becoming allies, strangers becoming friends. Species that had never worked together learning to coordinate their efforts. The Allied fleet was growing larger than anyone had expected. But more importantly, it was unified. Not by force or fear, but by something the Concordat had never understood. Gratitude, loyalty, hope. The humans had spent 50 years giving those gifts to anyone who needed them. Now those gifts were being returned ATHOUSAND Admiral Chen stood beside the president watching the fleet assemble. "They are still outnumbered," he said. "The Concordat has 10,000 warships. We have perhaps 4,000 total." Vasquez nodded. "Numbers are not everything, Admiral. The Concordat fights because they are ordered to fight. Our allies fight because they choose to. That difference matters more than you might think." She turned to face him. "Besides, I do not think this war will be decided by ships and weapons. I think it will be decided by something much simpler. The Concordat is about to learn what happens when you threaten the one species that never stopped making friends." Across the galaxy, more ships were moving toward Sol. The tide was turning. And the Concordat had no idea what was coming. The galaxy declared war. The Deathworlders smiled and sent an SOS that shook every alien empire. Part 3. Admiral Crix had served the Concordat for 80 years. He had fought in 12 wars and commanded fleets in 3 different spiral arms. He had never lost a battle. When High Chancellor Zyrith gave him command of the invasion force, he accepted with absolute confidence. His fleet was magnificent. 10,000 warships from 20 different species, all united under Concordat command. Battleships the size of small moons. Carriers holding millions of fighters. Support vessels that could keep the fleet supplied for years. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The journey to the Sol system took 3 weeks. During that time, Admiral Crix reviewed intelligence reports about human defenses. Their fleet was small. Their technology was good, but not exceptional. Their homeworld had orbital stations and ground defenses, but nothing that could stop a force of this size. It should have been a simple victory. Overwhelming force against inferior numbers. The humans would surrender or be destroyed. Either outcome was acceptable, but when the Concordat fleet finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, Admiral Crix saw something that made his heart stop beating. Earth was surrounded by ships. Not hundreds, thousands, ships of every design imaginable. Sleek vessels and bulky freighters. Ancient warships and modern cruisers. Some were barely held together with repairs. Others gleamed like new. They flew in formations that should have been impossible. Dozens of different species working together as if they had trained together for years. "Admiral," his sensor officer said, voice shaking, "I am counting over 4,000 vessels in defensive formation. Many more are arriving every hour." Crix stared at the display. "Identify them." "All of them." The process took several minutes. When it was complete, the Admiral felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. The Meraki had sent their mining barges. These massive ships were designed to cut through asteroids, but their drilling lasers could slice through any hull in the Concordat fleet. There were 200 of them, forming the center of the defensive line. The Veth had contributed their seed ships. Their hulls were made of organic compounds that absorbed energy weapons. Concordat lasers would be useless against them. 70 seed ships protected the flanks. The Krellian exiles had brought their ancient warships out of hiding. These were vessels from the old war, ships that had fought the Concordat to a standstill before the Krellians were defeated. There were only 30 of them, but each one was worth 10 Concordat battleships. And those were just the species Crix recognized. There were hundreds of other vessels from species he had never seen. Deep space wanderers. Lost colonies. Forgotten peoples. All of them had come to stand with humanity. At the center of the Allied formation was a single human ship. It was old and battered, clearly a veteran of many battles. The name painted on its hull was the ESS Endeavor. Standing on its bridge was President Elena Vasquez. A communication request appeared on Crix's display. He accepted it. Vasquez looked calm, almost peaceful. Behind her, Crix could see humans and aliens working together. A Meraki at the weapons console. A Veth at navigation. A Krellian at communications. Admiral Crix, Vasquez said. I hope your journey was comfortable. I wanted to speak with you before anything irreversible happens. Crix forced his voice to remain steady. You cannot win this battle, human. Even with your allies, you are still outnumbered. Surrender now, and we will show mercy. Mercy, Vasquez repeated the word slowly. That is an interesting concept. Let me ask you something, Admiral. Do you know why all these ships are here? They are fools who have been deceived by human propaganda. Vasquez shook her head. No, Admiral. They are here because of mercy. Real mercy. Not the kind that comes from power looking down at weakness. The kind that comes from equals helping each other. She gestured at the fleet around her. The Meraki are here because human doctors saved their children from a plague your Concordat ignored. The Veth are here because human scientists taught them how to feed their people. The Krellians are here because humans hid them from genocide for 200 years. The president stepped closer to the camera. Every ship in this fleet has a story like that. We did not build this alliance with weapons or threats. We built it by being decent, by helping when we could, by treating everyone we met as worthy of respect. Admiral Crix said nothing. He was thinking about his own crew. How many of them had families on worlds touched by human kindness? How many had heard stories about the strange species from Earth who helped without asking for anything in return? You have a choice now, Vasquez continued. The same choice we have always offered everyone. You can be our enemy, or you can be our friend. But know this. If you fire first, you will not just be fighting humans. You will be fighting everyone who believes in what we represent. And what do you represent? Crix asked. Oh, Vasquez said simply. The idea that the galaxy does not have to work the way the Concordat says it does. That the strong do not have to crush the weak. That different species can work together as equals. That kindness is not weakness. She paused. Your fleet is larger than ours. You might win this battle. But even if you destroy us here today, you cannot destroy what we have built. The idea has already spread too far. Help to many species. Change to many minds. Admiral Crix looked at his tactical display. The numbers were not as clear as they had seemed before. The Allied fleet was organized brilliantly. Their defensive positions used the geography of the Sol system perfectly, and his own fleet was tired from the long journey, while they were rested and ready. But he had orders. The High Chancellor had commanded him to crush humanity and restore order to the galaxy. Refusing was not an option. Your words are pretty, Crix said finally. But words do not win wars. Ships and weapons win wars, and we have more of both. Vasquez nodded slowly. Then I am sorry for what comes next. Truly sorry. Not for us. We made our choice long ago, but sorry for your crews. For the lives that will be lost because of one Chancellor's pride. She raised her hand in a gesture Crix did not recognize. Later, he would learn it was a human custom. A salute between warriors who respect each other. Good luck, Admiral. I hope we both survive to talk again someday. The transmission ended. Admiral Crix stood alone on his bridge, staring at the fleet of species he had been taught to ignore. Species that had somehow united behind a single planet. He thought about what Vasquez had said. Hope. Such a small word. Such a dangerous idea. Then he gave the order to attack. The Battle of Sol had begun. And the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy declared war. The Deathworlders smiled and sent an SOS. That shook every alien empire apart, for the first shots of the Battle of Sol were fired by the Concordat flagship. A massive beam of concentrated energy struck the Allied defensive line. The Veth siege ships absorbed most of the impact, their organic hulls glowing briefly before dissipating the energy harmlessly into space. Admiral Crix watched in disbelief. His weapons, capable of destroying moons, had done almost nothing. The Allied fleet did not counterattack. Instead, they held their positions, absorbing wave after wave of Concordat fire. Meraki mining lasers disabled weapons on attacking ships without destroying them. Krellian vessels targeted engines, leaving enemies drifting but alive. Human ships coordinated the defense, directing each ally to exactly where they were needed. "They are not trying to destroy us," Crix's tactical officer said. "They are trying to stop us without killing us." Crix did not understand. In every war he had fought, the goal was simple: destroy the enemy. But these allies were doing something different. They were protecting Earth while causing as little death as possible. Hours passed. The Concordat fleet pushed forward slowly, but every advance cost them ships. Not destroyed, disabled. Crews left alive to watch as their weapons failed. Their engines died. Then something strange began happening. Concordat cruisers suddenly stopped firing and moved out of formation. Then another. Then 5 more. Within minutes, dozens of Concordat ships were breaking ranks and flying toward neutral space. "What is happening?" Crix demanded. His communications officer looked terrified. "Admiral, we are receiving transmissions from across the fleet. Crews are refusing to fight. They are surrendering." Crix switched to the fleet-wide channel and heard chaos. Voices shouting over each other. Arguments between officers and their crews. On ship after ship, the same conversation was happening. A young Meraki gunner refused to fire on vessels carrying his cousins. A Volani engineer shut down her ship's weapons rather than help destroy the people who had saved her grandmother's life. A Kreth pilot remembered. A human doctor who had treated his daughter for free and could not bring himself to attack. The Concordat fleet was not being defeated by weapons. It was being defeated by conscience. On the planet Valuris Prime, Vesic had been working throughout the battle. She had discovered something hidden in the Concordat archives. Something that explained everything. 10 years ago, High Chancellor Zareth had commissioned a secret study. He wanted to know how dangerous humanity really was. The study had concluded that humans were not a military threat. Their fleet was too small. Their population too limited. They could never conquer the galaxy by force. But the study had warned of a different danger. Humans were building influence through kindness. Every species they helped became more independent, more willing to question Concordat authority, more likely to demand change. The study recommended 2 options. First, ignore the humans and hope their influence remained limited. Second, destroy them completely before their ideas could spread further. Zareth had chosen the second option, but he had kept the real reason secret. He had told the Concordat that humans were a military threat because he knew no one would support a war based on the truth, that he was afraid of kindness, that he wanted to destroy hope itself. Desic broadcast the study to every ship in the Concordat fleet. She sent it to every planet in the Alliance. She made sure everyone knew the truth about why they were fighting. The effect was immediate. On Admiral Crix's flagship, his own crew presented him with the documents. They were species he had served alongside for decades. Volani, Kreth, and others who had trusted him completely. "Admiral," his first officer said, "the Chancellor lied to us. This war is not about protecting the Concordat. It is about one man's fear of change. We cannot continue fighting for this." Crix looked at the faces around him. Some were angry. Others were sad. All of them had realized the same thing he was now understanding. They had been used. The Admiral thought about his career. 80 years of service. 12 wars. All of it in defense of an order he had believed was just. Now he learned that order was built on lies, on fear, on the suppression of anyone who dared to hope for something better. He thought about President Vasquez in her strange salute. She had known this moment would come. She had known the truth would spread eventually. That was why the Allied fleet had fought defensively. They were not trying to destroy the Concordat. They were trying to give it time to destroy itself. Admiral Crix made his decision. He opened a channel to every ship in the fleet, to every planet watching, to the entire galaxy. "This is Admiral Crix of the Concordat Combined Fleet. I am ordering an immediate ceasefire. All vessels will stand down and await further instructions." He paused, searching for the right words. I was told that humans were a threat to galactic order. I now understand that we were the disorder. The Concordat has maintained control through fear and suppression for thousands of years. We called it order. We called it peace. But it was neither. The Admiral looked at the Allied fleet on his display. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species, all working together, all choosing to be there. The humans showed the galaxy another way. They proved that different species can cooperate without conquest. That strength can be used to help instead of harm. That kindness is not weakness. He straightened his posture, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. I surrender this fleet, not to humanity, not to any single species. I surrender to the idea that we can do better, that the galaxy can do better, and I accept whatever judgment awaits me for my part in this war. Across the Concordat fleet, weapons powered down. On 100 worlds, people watched in stunned silence. The largest military force ever assembled had just laid down its arms. The Battle of Sol was over. But the real battle, the battle for the future of the galaxy, was just beginning. On the ESS Endeavour, President Vasquez received Admiral Crix's surrender with quiet dignity. There were no celebrations, no triumph, just relief that the killing had stopped. What happens now? Admiral Chen asked. Vasquez looked at the stars at the Allied fleet, at the Concordat ships drifting peacefully beside former enemies. We build something new, she said. Something better. And we do it together. Across the galaxy, beings of every species heard those words and dared to believe them. The old order had fallen, and in its place, something beautiful was being born. The galaxy declared war. The Deathworlders smiled and sent an SOS that shook every alien empire. Part 5. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Sol. The galaxy was unrecognizable to anyone who had known it before. The Galactic Concordat no longer existed. It had not been destroyed by humanity or any outside force. It had simply dissolved. Species that had spent thousands of years under Concordat control suddenly found themselves free to choose their own paths. Some chose isolation. Others joined the new coalition forming around Earth. All of them were making their own decisions for the first time in their histories. On the crystal world of Valorous Prime, High Chancellor Zirith faced trial. The chamber where he had once declared war on humanity was now filled with representatives from every species he had wronged. Meraki miners sat beside Veth farmers. Krellian survivors shared space with former Concordat officers, who had realized too late what they had been fighting for. The humans had argued for mercy. They always argued for mercy. But this time, they were outvoted by species whose suffering had been too great. The sentence was exile. Zirith would spend the rest of his life on a primitive world with no technology, no servants, no power. He would learn what it meant to be alone and helpless, dependent on the kindness of others. The same kindness he had tried to destroy. As guards led him away, Zirith passed by Thesik. The young intelligence officer had become a hero for revealing the truth about the war. She could have enjoyed fame and privilege. Instead, she had chosen to work as a liaison between the Villani and humanity. Why? Zirith asked her. Why help the species that destroyed everything our people built? Thesik considered the question carefully. Because they did not destroy anything, Chancellor. They freed us. We were so busy controlling others that we never realized we had become prisoners ourselves. Prisoners of fear and pride, and the belief that domination was the only path to security. She looked at the crystal walls around them. The humans showed us another way. And now we have a chance to build something better than what we had before. Zirith said nothing more. There was nothing left to say. 3 months later, Thesik traveled to Earth. She wanted to understand these humans better, to see how they lived and why they had chosen such a different path. What she found surprised her. Earth was not the paradise she had expected. The planet bore scars from wars and disasters. Cities stood beside ruins. Beautiful forests grew near polluted wastelands. Humans had clearly struggled with the same conflicts that plagued every species, but they had survived. More than survived. They had learned from their mistakes and kept moving forward. and they had taken those lessons to the stars, sharing them with anyone willing to listen. Desic spent a month traveling across the planet. She visited great cities and small villages. She met scientists and farmers, artists and soldiers. Everywhere she went, she asked the same question. Why do you help others? Why do you extend kindness to strangers? The answers were always different, but they shared a common theme. A doctor in a busy hospital said, "Because someone helped me once when I had nothing. I am just passing it on." A teacher in a small school said, "Because every child deserves a chance to learn. It does not matter where they come from." An old soldier with scars on his face said, "Because I have seen what happens when people stop caring about each other. I never want to see it again." Desic's last stop was a small town in the middle of a vast agricultural region. The humans called it Kansas. There she found something that finally helped her understand everything, Human farmer was teaching a group of Meraki refugees how to grow crops in the unfamiliar earth soil. The Meraki had fled their homeworld after the Concordat collapse. They had nowhere else to go. The humans had welcomed them without hesitation. Desic watched the farmer demonstrate planting techniques. He was patient and kind, repeating explanations until everyone understood. He had no military training, no diplomatic credentials, no special importance. He was just an ordinary human helping because there were people who needed help. Why? Desic asked him. Your world just fought a war. You could have demanded anything from the galaxy. Tribute, territory, submission. Why are you farming with refugees instead? The old man laughed and wiped dirt from his hands. Because they are hungry, he said simply, and we have got food. Is that not enough? Desic felt something shift inside her. In that moment, she finally understood what made humans different. It was not their strength, or their technology, or their cleverness. It was this: the simple belief that helping others was its own reward. That kindness needed no justification beyond itself. On the galactic stage, President Vasquez addressed the new coalition. Representatives from over 300 species had gathered to discuss the future. It was the largest gathering of different peoples in galactic history. We have a choice to make, Vasquez said. We can build another Concordat, another alliance based on power and control, or we can try something new. She looked around the chamber at the incredible diversity of life surrounding her. Humanity proposes a simple principle. Help those who need it. Stand with those who stand with you. Never give up on each other. Not because we are strong enough to demand it, but because it is right. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, representatives began to signal their agreement. The vote was unanimous. Across the galaxy, the news spread. A new era had begun. Not an empire, not an alliance of convenience, but a community built on mutual respect and shared purpose. On a distant colony world, a young Villani child asked her grandmother about the war. She had heard stories about the terrible humans who had destroyed the Concordat. She wanted to know if they were true. The grandmother thought carefully before answering. The humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, she finally said. Not because they can destroy anything that threatens them. They are dangerous because they showed us all that strength means nothing without kindness. They taught us that power is only valuable when it is used to help others. They made us question everything we thought we knew. The child looked confused. That does not sound dangerous. The grandmother smiled. It is the most dangerous thing of all, little one. Because once you understand that truth, you can never go back to the way things were. The humans changed the galaxy not with weapons, but with an idea. The idea that we can all be better than we are. She looked up at the stars, at the ships of a dozen species passing peacefully overhead. And now that idea belongs to everyone. Across the cosmos, former enemies became neighbors. Old wounds began to heal. Species that had fought for millennia learned to work together. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts and disagreements. But something fundamental had changed. Hope had won. And the humans, the Deathworlders, who refused to fight alone, continued doing what they had always done. reaching out one hand at a time to anyone willing to reach back. The galaxy had declared war on humanity. They had expected to destroy one small species on one small planet. Instead, they had discovered what happened when you underestimated the power of kindness, and the universe was better for it.